very dangerous sea conditions. Further north, it's disruption from snow which is more likely, especially over the higher parts of northern England, Scotland and Northern Ireland. 20 centimetres of snow in places, and the risk of blizzards and drifting of that snow. Sunnier skies return to the southern half of the UK meanwhile. The rain and snow turns to showers into the afternoon, but it stays very windy everywhere. It's cold in the north, 3 to 5 Celsius for Scotland and Northern Ireland. Milder further south, but not feeling pleasant at all in that very strong wind. The weekend stays unsettled. There'll be further spells of rain, hill snow, as well as strong winds, especially on Sunday. But the winds not quite as strong as Eunice.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello and welcome to Headliners. In just a few moments we will be discussing Angela Rayner doing her best Dirty Harry impersonation. We have Storm Eunice coming in and cognitive decline to wind up with. It's like a whole lifetime of an arc in a single hour. But first the news with Polly Middlehurst.
Thank you. And your top story tonight is that Storm Eunice has started to hit the UK already, causing a red weather warning to be issued for South Wales and the southwest of England. It's barrelling in tonight and tomorrow, and the Prime Minister has confirmed the Army is on standby to help. All schools in North Wales and Bristol will close tomorrow as a precaution. Other schools in England are considering closing their schools as well. The River Severn has limited crossings. In fact, crossings will be closed from 11 o'clock tonight. That's right now. Attractions are closing. Travel disruption is expected, and a major incident has been declared in some areas already, meaning people are being warned to stay indoors and hunker down. In other news tonight, Boris Johnson says an attack on a kindergarten in Ukraine was a Russian false flag operation to fabricate a reason for an invasion. Speaking on a visit to RAF Waddington in Lincolnshire, the Prime Minister said he feared this is the kind of thing we'll see more of over the next few days.
We know it was a false flag operation designed to discredit the Ukrainians, designed to create a pretext, a spurious provocation for Russian action.
Boris Johnson speaking this morning. Well, the Health Secretary says an announcement into a government review of COVID protections will be made next week. During a visit to the UK Health Security Agency at Porton Down, Sajid Javid said today future plans will focus on protecting those who are clinically vulnerable. It comes amid reports that free COVID testing is to be scrapped.
We are looking at how we learn to live with COVID, and that does mean the protections we've enjoyed over the last few months, that they all should be reviewed. So we're looking at the very latest data, and next week we'll have more to say about it.
Sajid Javid there. In the United States, Donald Trump must answer questions under oath as part of a civil investigation into his business practices. A US judge has ruled the former president and two of his adult children, Ivanka and Donald Jr., must sit for a deposition within 21 days. New York's Attorney General even says she's uncovered evidence that Mr. Trump's company used fraudulent or misleading asset valuations to get loans and tax benefits. Mr. Trump could invoke his Fifth Amendment right to remain silent in the deposition. Well, as you've been hearing, the UK bracing itself for the full impact of Storm Eunice tonight and tomorrow. Our Home and Security editor Mark White has more details.
Storm Dudley has already barrelled across the country, the smaller of two storms battering Britain in as many days. But Dudley still left very significant damage. Trees down, roofs lifted off, major disruption to travel. In the hours ahead, it's the turn of Storm Eunice, a much more powerful weather event with red warnings of 100-mile-an-hour winds, tidal surges and snow for some. For Storm Eunice, continuing coverage. Stay with GB News.
Do stay safe and let us know your stories about Storm Eunice on TV, online and on your radio via DAB+. You're with GB News. Now it's time for Headliners.
Hello and welcome to Headliners. I'm Simon Evans. Joining me tonight, we have an American invasion in the form of Eric McElroy. It is McElroy, not McElroy. I have to always ask that because I had a physics teacher, McElroy. Remember, I've told you this before, and I can never remember which way around it is. Once you lodge it in your brain that you don't know for sure, you have to check every time. And Scott Capurro, that's
Close enough.
Close enough. Scott Capurro, ladies and gentlemen. So, are you two here to bring us democracy, or are you here to steal our resources? That's the question. American invasions. They have a bad reputation, but maybe you're here to preserve democracy.
Freedom is what we are here to offer today to the people of Britain.
Right.
And democracy's been a non-starter from the word go. We're offering you business. That's America's job.
It would be a terrible irony if the British democracy outlived the American version.
It already has, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think, well, from what I've watched CNN, American democracy hangs in the balance now.
It's declining.
It could go, yeah. What will it be replaced with, do you think? A new theocracy? There is a theory that that's the cycle. Theocracy, aristocracy, democracy.
And RuPaul. That's what comes next.
RuPaul drag queen. Yeah,
God.
That's it, yeah. So essentially government by some sort of glamorous panel.
Yeah, who doesn't like a guy in a dress? It calms people way down.
Well, that's Trudeau's line, isn't it? So he's working that one. So anyway, you both look well. You okay? You're getting enough vitamin D. That's what I worry about when people visit this country.
It was sunny today.
In the 30s, we used to get loads of like high-ranking academics would come over and join like the mathematics department in Cambridge, and they get tuberculosis and die within a year. It was terrible. Now, generally speaking, people just look a bit pasty, but we're all okay, aren't we? We're getting everything we need. That's good.
Pretty much.
So, let's take a look at tomorrow's front pages. We'll start with the Mail, and it leads with UK braces for Stingjet storm. Stingjet storm. That is an I don't know whether the Mail has patented that term. I think it's generally being called Eunice, which sounds a lot less threatening than Stingjet. We'll be coming back to that. Also, when will pampered princes realise the age of deference is over? I don't know whether that literally means princes in nappies or whether just like softened with luxury. The Telegraph has Russia begins false flag attacks. We'll be trying to unpick what that means exactly. And Britain braces as worst storm in 3 decades triggers red warning. Braces are advised, probably braces and a belt in these circumstances. The Guardian leads with Russia ready to fake cause for Ukraine attack. Biden. That's Biden's opinion about this artillery-shelled kindergarten. Rather distressing, but hard to quite understand what's going on there. We'll try and understand that. Red weather warning as Storm Eunice hits UK. That's the Sting jet. And finally, a story we'll be covering. MPs' interest groups get £13 million from private firms. The Financial Times has Russia poised to invade Ukraine within days. Biden warns allies. That headline, of course, could have been on the paper for the last 3 or 4 weeks, I should think. The Mirror leads with inhumane. Thousands of elderly residents kicked out in tsunami of private care home closures. An actual tsunami, of course, might hit them tomorrow. And Eye of the Storm, Britain braced for weather hell, in the terms I've just laid out for you. The Times has Whitehall convinced Putin is about to invade, and stay inside, Britain's warned, amidst worst storm in 30 years. Strange picture of Boris Johnson in the cockpit of a fighter plane. Now, I'm not sure whether he's about to repel Putin or fly into the storm to demonstrate his own valour. The Sun has a 100-mile-per-hour killer storm. Brits told to stay at home as Eunice nears, and Met Office say significant danger to life. And finally, the Daily Star. With Eunice chaos this week, I shall be mostly staying in my bed. I don't know why they've gone back to the Fast Show for that one, but anyway, there it is. There's also a giveaway. Free psychic pets pull out. Well, if that doesn't tip the balance for you, I can't think what will. That's Headliners. We'll be discussing those stories next. So, Storm Eunice looks like it's going to cause some serious damage. This is from the Mail. Eric, you've got this.
Yeah, I mean, it does look really dire. They're saying, I think the winds have started now, but from 7 o'clock tomorrow morning until midday, it could be really, really bad. And so, obviously, people need to be careful, and I guess stay indoors is the advice.
Is it coming from the west in the usual manner? I mean, most of these terrible storms are American imports, from what I understand. And that is essentially, so we can assume like Cornwall and Devon and Wales get it first?
Getting all of that kind of stuff through there. I do think, you know, it's going to be serious, so you don't want to make light of it. I think Eunice is a good name for a serious storm. Yeah. Because it does sound like an angry headmistress who's, you know, sort of punishing the children.
Didn't it use, wasn't it a, was it not a Pink Floyd track, Careful with That Axe? That wasn't Eunice, was it? What was it? Do you remember that was on Umagamma, an early album before they really broke through? Careful with That Axe.
My Pink Floyd knowledge.
Eugene, that was Eugene. What I quite like about Eunice is that it's got EU at the front, which sort of suggests that it's like the EU taking their revenge on us.
Yeah, it's a disaster already.
Yeah, we already had Dutch elm disease. I always felt that was underappreciated as a deciding factor in turning us against Europe.
Well, obviously for you, it changed your mind.
Yeah, it certainly did. I grew up with it. Yeah.
And the Welsh have cancelled all train service tomorrow. Oh. Just so people know. And
it's almost impossible to get a train in Wales anyway.
And there's nowhere to go unless you're leaving Wales.
I mean, you try and get a train to Cardigan, for instance.
And they don't have any plane service. They never have. No. I'm worried about tomorrow morning because I have a yoga class at 10 a.m.
Right.
That better happen.
Well,
or else you're really going to hear about it.
You need to be flexible if you're going to go into the storm. I mean, that is a good.
I'll bend over backwards to get there. But I think, you know, my husband and I watch. He's from Brazil and I'm from the U.S. And
it's probably your gay behaviour that's caused this storm.
It's our gay.
Realise that.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Flounce.
It's our desire to adopt. That's what it is. It's causing
flaunting that, not flouncing it. Sorry, flaunting.
Flouncing is good though, and more accurate. But he's from Brazil, and he's seen some pretty treacherous storms, especially recently. And I'm from the U.S., where we have some pretty bad ones in the Northwest. Yeah. And we watch stories here about bad storms. Like, bit of rain, really. It's going to be a bit of rain tomorrow.
We don't have trailer parks. That's why. I don't think that the weather's any worse in America.
You don't anymore. You don't anymore. But I was watching some video coverage of the big storm of the '80s, '87, I think.
Yeah, it was.
And there were some trailers overturned. So you used to have them, and then you learned.
That was the big one. I remember, and I was living in a part of southeast London, which was in quite a significant valley, and we heard nothing. And I remember getting up in the morning and just going to work, and everyone was going, "Were you all right?" And I heard nothing. And it wouldn't even have my sleep disturbed. And about a mile away, there were trees all over the place. Yeah. There's a town called Seven Oaks where my wife, I didn't know her at that point, but she was still at school then. And if I'm lucky, my third wife is still at school now. But Yeah, my wife was at school in Sevenoaks, and it became One Oak overnight.
Right,
I mean,
wow,
that was pretty serious.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's going to be on that scale, is it? I don't know.
Well, I mean, I have had a theory for a long time that part of the because coming from the States where we have tornadoes and we have earthquakes and we have hurricanes, that a lot of the reason why the empire was able to grow from this tiny island was because you don't normally have any kind of weather or events.
Oh, you're putting it down to that, are you? Some sort of weird climatic.
Because nothing happens
You'll
here.
find it's the Anglo genes, the thirst for adventure.
Yeah, it looks like global change is changing the formula a little bit.
That could be true. So, we'll see, won't we, whether Britain's standing in the world survives Storm Eunice. Friday's Independent next. Sorry, not Friday's Independent next. And Russia is being accused of a false flag attack. This is on most of the front pages, but we'll take it from the Independent. I can't quite get my head around this, Scott. We have a kindergarten in, what's it called? Dundas, something like that?
Yes, something like that.
Donbass. It's a part of Ukraine.
It was, and now it's...
The world regards it as part of Ukraine. It's kind of under Soviet...
The EU regards it as part of the Ukraine. Right. Russia doesn't, and it's now under the control and manipulation of Russian separatists.
Yeah. And so in what sense is it a false flag operation? Because nobody's denying that Russia did it.
No. Putin says he doesn't have responsibility for it, but it is a bombing from that area to a school in what is currently Ukraine.
Yeah. Didn't kill any children.
No.
Some adults have got concussion, is that right? I think it's a fairly... I mean, it's left some rubble in it.
No one's died. Yeah, there's rubble. There's a couple holes in walls and stuff. And I think they've just done it to scare people.
Yeah.
I also think that Putin is behind it, obviously. He is behind everything that's going on in the Ukraine right now.
Yeah.
And
he's behind the whole world. He's the criminal mastermind. He's like McCavity the mystery
He's
guy.
a genius. He could sell up he could sell up my show in Edinburgh. That's how good he is.
He's ruined my marriage.
Yeah. Really, is that the reason? But nice to have an excuse. But yeah, he's trying to antagonize Biden. That's what this is all about. Yeah. And again, the EU...
I'm glad you said try and get a rise out of Biden, but that really would be optimistic at this point.
The EU wants to be recognized. They want to say, hey, we're part of this. We're in the house. We can help. We can control. He is completely disinterested in what the EU thinks.
Uninterested.
That too.
Yeah.
He's what he's trying to do is to antagonize the US to attack, to bring in, hopefully, some planes to bomb the area using NATO as a cover so that he can then say, see, we are under attack.
Yeah.
We do need to have you. The Russians think of the Ukraine as being part of Russia.
Yeah.
And until 2019, a lot of, really to 2014 and then 2019 again, a lot of Ukrainians saw themselves as about half the population thought themselves Russian too. But that number is declining. And the thing is, Putin is showing a lot of aggression here. He's flexing muscle, but it's making the situation worse for him.
Yeah.
What he needs to do is let the Ukraine be the Ukraine. And the position of power, the highest office in the Ukraine, swaps all the time. It goes from being pro-Russian to not pro-Russian.
Yeah.
And in fact, the comedian who won the office in 2019 was more centrist pro-Russian than he is now.
Yeah.
But Putin's behavior has made this guy behave against him, which he doesn't want to do. But he finds himself in a position of having to defend the Ukraine. The Ukrainians are worried about their language being taken away and Russian being...
But they banned Russian, right?
Well, he has banned Russian on public television. And the Ukrainians are also worried about their Orthodox Church going back to Moscow, which is what they don't want. Right. So there's other issues involved for local Ukrainians. Yeah. And what they're concerned now is not just holding onto their sovereignty, but holding onto their culture. They feel overwhelmed by Russia.
But Putin just is only concerned that NATO doesn't advance as he was promised it wouldn't do on countless occasions.
Putin wants,
and he's given a lot of concessions over the last, what is he? He's been in power for a long time.
Quite a while, in and out.
Wave after wave of concession in which, missiles have come further.
Well, he wants
the medium-range missiles.
He wants a missile factory taken out of Poland that America owns. Yeah. He wants some of the Finnish border back.
Let's hear from Eric on this. What do you think?
Well, I think Putin, as the poor man in this situation, has been bullied. Is a little bit,
Oh, he's not being bullied.
Well, because
at some point he's got to stand up for himself.
Well, he has stood up. He invaded Ukraine earlier, and he invaded Georgia earlier. And I mean, democratically elected countries that choose to join a defensive organization like NATO are a lot different than amassing 150,000 troops.
Yeah, Ukraine is that's a not entirely democratic.
But that's why Ukraine is years away from ever actually joining NATO. So he's using this as trying to recreate some sort of Soviet glory because he used to be a KGB agent and he can't take his shirt off.
I like the idea anyway that there's a sort of paramilitary wing of Russia who are actually sort of taking decisive action. It does seem to me that an awful lot of the major wars, even of the 20th century, and certainly the ones events that brought new players into those wars were triggered by what turned out to be false flag events. And there's still a great deal of, a dispute as to what brought America into the First and Second World War and all that kind of thing. It's almost as if, the international laws governing war are actually sort of counterproductive. You should just go, if you want to have a war, just have a war. You don't need to trigger it, and then you could at least say who was to blame.
And part of the problem is, I think Eric's right, a lot of leaders want to be remembered, and there's one way to be remembered, and that's winning a war. Or losing one.
Friday's Guardian, front page, lobbying fears grow as millions of pounds permeate MPs' special interest groups in Parliament. Is this bad, Scott? Is this like like backhanders, or is it what is going on here?
Well, it's a backdoor entry. I think APPGs, which you may or may not know, are made up of lobbyists, and I'm looking for what APBG is.
It's the All-Party Parliamentarian Group.
Thank you.
Yes.
Right.
And
it's a mechanism for allowing lobbyists to bribe politicians. Is that without saying it sort of
influence them? And help.
Okay.
Apparently, £13 million have poured into a growing network of MPs' interests, and these networks are private firms, and they're made up of healthcare bodies, arms companies, and tech giants. And it's fueling concerns that there's influences coming in with money to MPs.
That doesn't seem like a huge amount of money in this context. I suppose if that's coming into actual MPs, it's a lot of money.
Yeah. The money's used, though, for things that people feel uncomfortable about. You used to fund trips, secretarial work, hospitality, and services that are opaque to the public. And so these things are happening behind the public's back, effectively. And I think the MPs are too nervous to mention where the money's coming from. It may not sound like a lot to you because you're quite wealthy, but 13 million to the average person sounds like a lot. And they're like, why is this money, what is it buying? Is what people are worried about.
I would like to know where it's going. That's what I mean. I mean, if it's going to individuals, it's an awful lot of money. If it's a kind of budgetary, I don't know. It's all about context, isn't it?
There are times where groups, it makes sense for them to come together to lobby government and have, in the COVID crisis, comedians got together with a comedy association to raise our issues and that kind of thing.
In fact, a lot of good that did, but still.
Yes, we tried to get organized for once, but I mean, the problem is here that these aren't, you look at some of these groups, they never save the kittens, are they?
Yeah, well, the concern is that these groups are finding out what the MPs are interested in, where they're, private interests, and then they're funding those to then say to the MP, well, we gave money to that, now we'd like to ask you to kind of usher in this law or push along this rule.
And it's always it's the boring stuff, isn't it? Which is where they get away with it. Because I remember, there's a guy called Jesse Norman, who's a Conservative MP, who was in the Treasury for a while, who wrote a book about Adam Smith and the free market mechanism, a defence of it. And because he was a Tory MP, I was quite interested to see this chapter where he discussed the extraordinary successes of lobbying groups in America, how they can spend, because they've got enough money, they can spend like 2 or 3 million lobbying for tax breaks or kind of historical tax debts to be eliminated that are worth billions, literally billions. It's so effective if you do
They also provide secretarial work in the U.S. so that sometimes politicians themselves cannot afford the people needed to write laws. So the lobbyists send in people of their own. So suddenly what you're getting is lobbyists writing laws in the U.S. And I think that's where they're afraid of here. Is these companies want their own MP, and the MP wants their own lobbyist group. So it seems
a very bad direction if we were to go in it, And we saw that thing, there was a couple of weeks ago where there was a Labour MP like taking money from China. It was like it's being monitored and everything, but you kind of feel like this, I don't know if this has always been there, whether it's just like emerging more now, whether it's more visible, but it feels like we're slipping into that American model a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
But the money is peanuts compared to the US.
Oh,
It's just
but as people find out what the MP's pet interests are, the money will grow.
Well, the one thing as well that it's going to be enormous in the next few years is obviously fuel. Climate crisis is driving green energy legislation that is going to be incredibly expensive. I mean, the sums of money are eye-watering, and the fuel giants, those firms, they have the money to drive that policy.
And so do healthcare firms too, like Johnson & Johnson, Medtronic, and Novo Nordisk, and they all have little lobbyists pushing MPs different directions and paying a bit of money too. I mean, $178,000 was paid to an MP over concerns about obesity. That was one of his pet things that he wanted to pursue.
I took that one personally.
Right.
Trying to lose a bit of weight.
You're not obese.
Yeah.
Clinically.
You're cuddly.
Oh,
very warm in the winter.
Clinically cuddly. Friday's Daily Mirror now. and the Conservatives are to ban teachers from promoting political bias in the classroom. Well, that sounds all right on the face of it, Eric, but I expect there's more to it than meets the eye.
Yes, this is in the Mirror. It's new guidance that says Britain's imperial past must be taught in a balanced manner in schools. Now, coming from a country like Scott and I have, that we have some views about that balanced manner of the empire back in the day, in 1776, I think. But there, I mean, it's kind of, I mean, there's been a lot about teaching at universities lately and what's allowed and being balanced at schools and so on. There's already laws in place that say that teachers have to endeavor to be impartial and have to teach, quote unquote, British values of democracy and so on.
Did Black Lives Matter get specifically mentioned as the school cannot endorse that? Because funnily enough, my daughter's school did endorse it. I mean, when it first happened, like in May 2020, was it, the big eruption, George Floyd and everything? We got, I mean, they were already at home, of course. It was e-schooling. And we got an email kind of going, this school supports. And I sent them one back going, just slow down a minute there. I'm not sure you do want to endorse this organisation. Small case, lowercase, Black Lives Matter. Yes, of course, everyone supports that notion. But, you know...
Yeah, we've seen this, you know, it's come up a lot in the States with people saying critical race theory is being pushed in schools when it hasn't been, and then conflating the organization Black Lives Matter with the idea of the movement.
Yeah.
And if the idea here is that, you know, they can say that racism has no place in society, but can't represent Black Lives Matter without out being balanced and saying, well, what about neo-Nazi lives?
It's very difficult, isn't it? Because I mean, the thing you have to remember, I think, more than anything else when you're at school is limited time. It's just how many questions can you discuss? One thing my kids learn, which I think probably in common with most kids, is something that's broadly speaking called religious education. It used to be, and so you would. I remember when we did RE, you would learn about the faiths. You weren't indoctrinated in any of them. It was a slightly Christian school, but very, very slightly. We sang hymns in the morning, and then it was done. So you learned about the different faith systems, and you understood them. My kids at school, in RE, it seemed for the entire year, basically learned about the Holocaust and the American Civil Rights Movement. They learned nothing about anything like the Judaic or Islamic or Christian traditions. They learned about what are considered social justice issues. And I'm not saying it wouldn't be good for them to know about those things, but it struck me as being slightly... It was where the focus was. It wasn't so much then that they were also told that, you know, Nazis are bad. I mean, you know what I mean? I assume certain things would get in.
I mean, the way the empire is taught in school, because I've just had, my kids have just gone through all of this as well, and it's a very light touch, really mentioning the empire. I mean, that's why I think a lot of people didn't know, you know, the history of like Edward Colston and the slave trade.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if in this balanced view you have to say, well, you know, these people weren't protesting Black Lives Matter, they were protesting statues.
Yeah.
You know.
You wouldn't expect to learn about a single Bristolian slaver unless you lived in Bristol, I guess.
Learning about the role of the slave trade isn't something that I really saw in the curriculum for our kids. And it seems like it's an important part of the history to understand that, and then you wouldn't have these problems.
I mean, I did O-level history. I remember we did the 19th century, and we learned about, it was still called the Indian Mutiny, but there was a certain, but this was like, do you know about the Indian Mutiny? This was it. I think it was sort of about 1870 was sort of a rising up against the Raj, essentially. And we learned about the causes of it with, I think, a fair amount of equivocation and, you know, even-handedness. I now kind of, anytime I read about this in social media, whatever, people going, it's never been taught. It's never been taught before. You know, I think it was. You know, I don't.
I mean, the problem, and I don't mean this directed at you, but the problem is, even in this conversation, that have middle-class white men discussing what an Indian person might think is a curriculum subject taught properly. Yeah, it's difficult. And you know, from an Indian perspective or from an African-American person's perspective, BLM means something completely different. When Whoopi Goldberg made a remark on TV recently about the Jewish state and about Jewish religion and Jewish culture and what it meant to her and what racism meant to her, that was her perspective as a black person in the U.S. And, you know, she's someone who's been through whatever she's been through, but you cannot imagine what it's like to be confronted constantly, day after day after day, with mainstream, middle-class, white, controlling culture. And it is powerful and it is overwhelming, and I think it needs to be looked at within the curriculum, actually, from other people's perspective, and frankly, not just from yours.
So maybe there should be a new class within school which acknowledge that we have culture war issues or whatever, and how to think about them.
Diversity in the curriculum is really important. You know, when I was a kid in school, nobody talked about LGBT people. And now my sister tells me she thinks they talk about it too much at her daughter's school, but I don't think it can be talked about enough, frankly. I mean, when you're being pursued as a kid by other people and being abused and manipulated, it's horrible. And to have one moment maybe in the day where you learn that you're not disgusting and you're not going to burn in hell would be nice. So there's a balance.
Have you found that now?
Now I dream for it, but
you'll burn in hell for other reasons.
No, that's it for part one. We've got the Great Resignation coming up, new changes to the Scottish census and Italian deck chair wars. Stick around. These are our sponsors. Please buy their goods and services. See you in a few minutes. Thank you.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back to Headliners. It's me, Simon Evans, the wonderful Eric McElroy, and the comedically insightful Scott Capurro. Let's get on with it, shall we? As Paxman says, women are finally allowed to fight in the Kuwaiti army. Well, that is an outcome I've been hanging out for, I've got to tell you. But they may be slightly hindered. This is from The Guardian. Scott,
yes.
Scott, what is compromising their ability to fight?
Well, the Defence Ministry says that women can join the military, but they're not permitted without a male guardian to carry weapons.
Well, that seems reasonable.
Well, and women are saying, wait a minute, if you're going to let us join, let us join.
Yeah.
We should need a guardian. We should be able to carry weapons if we like. And they've talked to some women who are, eager to join.
Yeah.
And they've said, my mother, during the last rebellion, the one that America got involved in, the Kuwaiti War, she carried weapons under her. Clothing.
Was this the 93 when Saddam invaded? Yeah.
My stepbrother was there, and he almost got run over by a tank. Unfortunately, he survived. But yeah, women are angry about this, and they're eager to join mainstream society is what they want to do. They want to fit in, but
they've probably seen the women in the IDF, right?
Maybe.
The Israelis, I mean, they look...
I'm sure, that one too,
Bush AF, right?
And in the US Army. But conservative lawmaker Hamdan Al-Azmi is trying to stop them. He says this sort of behavior does not fit a woman's nature. He says that the culture is basically conservative, although Kuwait is thought of as the most open-minded, open society in the Gulf. He's saying that we're still a conservative culture and we are alien to this sort of behavior. It's indecent. And women are saying, it's not indecent. And in fact...
What do you think, Eric?
Well, I mean, I spent some time in the Middle East for my old career, and the Arab women, they do, regardless of cultural issues, they do run the household. There's a lot of strength in
There's
the
a
Arab
bit of
women.
difference between that and like carrying heavy arms into battle, though, right?
Well, but they're fierce women. I wouldn't want to mess with them, whether they were armed or not. The thing is, the Kuwaitis, kind of like the Israelis, need to have their to have women in the armed force because the country of 4 million, only about 1.3 million are actually Kuwaiti. Because they have so many expats that come into work. So if they want to have their own army, which generally you do want to have your own army for various reasons, they're going to have to allow women in, and they might want to give them a gun.
And are those expats, are they like high-ranking expats who come in and work in offices, or do you mean
service
the more
industry?
like,
this is, because there's it's the same with all over the Gulf. Dubai,
like the ones who
Qatar,
built the
so
football
on.
stadiums.
They're the ones
Qatar,
that are building the country and keep the country running. But in the army, you generally want your own citizens.
So really only about 1.3 million citizens in
4
Kuwait.
million, yeah.
That is, you would want to have a strong army just on that basis. Let alone
And I wonder how many American, I should have looked this up, how many American soldiers are there fighting for them to defending the nation. And, maybe they see that and the women think, I would like a bit of freedom like those women have, It's hard to see that sort of thing.
Is it freedom, though? It's the freedom. I mean, it's probably the least free of any professional class, isn't it?
It's very restrictive, you're right. It must be, they have a lot of rules.
The freedom to give up your freedom and to be
But I think
institutionalized.
you have the freedom to compete against men, and these women see that as something that's really interesting.
Well, it does sound like a fairly, all joking aside, a fairly dysfunctional compromise has been reached at the moment. Yes, you can join, but you need a guardian. It reminds me very slightly of watching the Grenadier Guards or the Horse Guards, the light cavalry. In those ceremonial activities outside Buckingham Palace, they have to be protected by actual, armed police or whatever on motorcycle.
Or maybe they want women in to get into the secretarial work and the kind of work that they can't find men interested in. The guys want to carry guns.
Yeah, but this is to be combat roles. So how can you be in a combat role in modern warfare without a gun?
Well, someone's got to be on the phone saying they're coming after us.
Flying drones. A lot of women fly drones now for the American stuff.
See, there's that too. They could do that.
They have killed as many wedding party attendees as men have, I believe.
Well, there you go. See, winning.
This is freedom. Shoot terrorists first, ask questions later. That's not John Rambo and not Dirty Harry. That is the deputy leader of the Labour Party. Dangerous rhetoric or savvy political manoeuvring, Scott?
It's Angela Rayner.
Trying to throw off the Corbyn.
I think I told you recently that I liked Angela Rayner, but I think I like her hair. You said she says some pretty ridiculous things, so I had to look her up. And she said that Britain's terror police should, quote, shoot first, ask questions later, as you said. The party's trying to kind of set out their credentials on law and order. She's distanced herself from Jeremy Corbyn. She said he and I, the former Labour leader, are on a different page. She said on things like law and order, I'm quite hardline. She says, I'm like, shoot your terrorists and ask what you want to hear later. And Keir Starmer is backing her up. They're kind of getting together sort of kind of a brutal approach toward, I think, law.
Well, Starmer's definitely tried to show he's got a tough attitude to Russia as well on this. They're definitely trying to distance themselves from the old stop the water. But shoot terrorists first, ask questions later.
It's insane.
The trick with that is the word terrorist in the first clause. If you haven't established that if you've done that, then you've sort of have asked the question already, right?
Well, I think this technique is known as the American policing method, which is to just shoot and then worry about cleaning things up at a later date. So that's kind of what they're going for. I think it's very easy for opposition parties without any actual power to say these kinds of things.
She says she wants cops to antagonize thugs. She wants people banging on the door at 3 a.m., waking them up and arresting them. And she said, she was plagued by antisocial behaviors herself when she was growing up. She knows what it's like to have someone come after you and have no support by the police. So she wants people that, need their help to get it.
Yeah, well, that seems fair enough. That's a slightly different issue, isn't it, I suppose?
It's a bit of a hysterical thing to say, though. It doesn't seem very diplomatic to say. Yeah.
Even though it was quite decisive, the terrorist who was killed on London Bridge, do you remember this? This was at the end of 2019, wasn't it, I think? And he was shot. He'd already killed somebody, he was face down, and they thought he might have a vest on.
But then if you go back to the Brazilian that was killed in 2000 and... I mean, he was completely innocent and it was completely, a miscarriage of justice. So
it was a terrible miscarriage.
And for a long time, Brazilians were terrified of getting on the train with a backpack. And for a very long time, they're still anxious about it. So,
really?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, you have to be
that was in the immediate aftermath of
7/7,
though, wasn't it? I mean, I think, I'm not defending it, but you can see that that's a slightly extraordinary situation where there was a...
But her remark sounds like it's still in that atmosphere.
But I think that's talking tough when you're out of power.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, this is from the Metro next. Some rather interesting clauses in Prince Andrew's deal with Virginia Roberts.
Yeah, or Virginia Giuffre.
I
love that.
What is the Roberts or Giuffre? Is that like a
Roberts
stage
was
name?
her maiden name and Giuffre is her married name.
Oh, she's married now. Okay.
Yeah. Yes, he's agreed in the the court order that's come out of their agreement, that he can no longer repeat his denial of being an accused rapist.
Right.
And so he can't say anything about it, which I think...
So if he's then questioned, if he were to do Emily Maitlis 2.0 and she were to say to him, so what does this mean? He'd just go,
He can't play Never Have I Ever, I think is the new thing now.
Wow.
That drinking game is barred from him. So
that is I mean, he is technically innocent because he's not been proven guilty. So that's his legal status,
that's
right?
12 million pounds worth of innocence.
Yeah. No, I know. I understand the. I understand the suspicion that that. I mean, that's the weird thing with these things, isn't it? But I suppose in due course you feel that eventually rumour disperses like fog, whereas once it's on the... It's a bit like, an FA Cup that's decided by a very dubious goal.
Yeah.
For weeks afterwards, people go, that wasn't really a goal, do you know what I mean? But like 2 or 3 years later, your name is etched on the cup, and that's all that matters, really, do you know what I mean?
Well, he'll lose his title, I think.
Oh, yeah.
And then we'll stop talking about it, hopefully. I wish she hadn't given in like this. I wish she'd taken him to civil court and sued him. It would have been good.
Yeah.
But she would have followed through with keeping the case.
I do wish,
and
important for other women who've been in this situation. Yeah. And he did say about his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein that he still doesn't regret being his friend. And I have a hard time
he's
with
changed
that.
He's definitely made some extraordinarily bad decisions. At the very least, in terms of his communications. Yeah. I mean, I know people who work in public relations and damage limitation and so on, and they all just sat there watching open-mouthed in that interview, and he's not done anything better since.
No, it's bad.
I didn't realize he was a vice admiral as well, which I can see the vice in the admiral.
Yeah.
No, he's extraordinary. But you're absolutely right, because the two suspicions you have now is A, there's no smoke without fire, so Prince Andrew is besmirched, and B, she was a gold digger all along.
That's
you have both. They've both come out of that.
Yeah. She had said recently that she wouldn't give in to money.
Yeah, but that's always a bargaining tactic. Right?
But maybe there's something else involved in that decision too. Maybe she just didn't. She's married.
It can be exhausting, can it? It can. You don't want it to define your whole life, I guess.
Yeah.
Let's see what she does with the 12 million. What do you think? Tiger Sanctuary?
Her wardrobe's questionable. She could use a makeover. There's that. That can be costly.
I would love to
We're
see
all
that.
paying for it.
I'd like to see that show.
Well, we can't go to lunch now for a while because that 12 million's got to come from somewhere. So
The Telegraph are running a story that has been simmering in the background for some time. This is the Great Resignation. Not a right-wing conspiracy theory. This is something more profound, Scott.
Well, half of Britain's workers are considering changing their jobs. A lot of these workers have been working from home and they think, well, that's glorious. I'd like to keep doing that. But over half of 16 to 34-year-olds have considered quitting their jobs and looking for new roles within the next few months. And I think they're feeling like, why was I working so hard for so little, not just pay, but recognition? And they're anxious too because businesses are now saying, well, we're going to give you a raise, but they know the raise will not keep up with the rise of costs. So they're thinking, why should I go back? I'll effectively be going to a job I don't want for less money.
Yeah.
So they're taking their time. I think a lot of people move back home and they feel like they can have a bit more time. And there are 1.3 million vacancies in jobs right now. So it's the workers' market, really. They can kind of ask for what they want, but they may or may not get it. And I think in the meantime, they're hedging their bets and they're taking some time off, really.
I have to say this working from home thing. I was saying to somebody today, a lot of people talked about, how will people cope? I was thinking that's been my life for the last 20 years. You know?
Although I never thought I would have my career ripped away from me the way it happened with COVID. I thought it would go away, would diminish with my behavior. But it was really hard, though, the social part to be gone. I really missed my friends and I missed communicating with an audience. And it must be really difficult to not be in office, although maybe the commute was so horrible that being at home with your family and seeing your friends at the cafe next door, that's nicer.
I actually found my social life improved genuinely during lockdown because we moved from London to Brighton. I would often have to leave gigs straight afterwards to get back to Brighton on the last train or whatever. Suddenly I didn't have jobs anymore, but my good friends all found it as easy to socialise with me on Zoom as they would to anybody else on Zoom. So instead of kind of going, love the one that you're with, you actually have the whole world again to socialise with, and the fact that you're kind of isolated, physically isolated. Do you know what I mean?
I do,
there was a sort of
more things
lovely
democratic
kind of level. Well, I don't know. What do you think?
I met my wife and children for the first time when I stopped working. I didn't realize they're in the house with me. I mean, I think maybe some of these jobs are becoming available because of Brexit. Maybe this is a Brexit benefit that these jobs are there because the Eastern Europeans and so on have gone home. But I don't know whether those jobs are what people want to do.
I doubt many people are giving up in order to go into fruit picking.
Well, they're definitely not going to work in the slaughterhouses. I mean, but if we don't have those people coming in because we need people to fill these jobs. We can't bring them in from the EU anymore. So I think what it means, we need more British people.
We need sex robots
or have
to be
our children
reprogrammed to do these jobs.
Child labor would solve this problem.
That would certainly
Or to have kids. You got to have a kids.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. It's
I mean,
time.
well, not for lack of trying, but
so many 21-year-olds stacking up needless student debt for worthless credentials when they could be earning good money out there. Do you know what I mean?
Sounds
Bringing
old.
in the
Get them working at
Courgette
12 or 13 when they, when they can defend themselves. I want them out on the street.
That's great. Have a gap year between your around year 9, year 10, something like that. Yeah.
Just get them
learn
into
a bit about the
factories.
real world.
I mean, they've been reevaluating their lives during their furlough, and I hope they come up with something good. Although. Yeah, I want to keep my cappuccino price down. That's what's my.
I do think these things, sometimes there's a little bit of social contagion about them. They become not a kind of, I guess it's like a meme or whatever. It's like an idea that just cashes on and starts getting good. Yeah, I'd like a new job. Yeah, I think I might switch jobs too. You know, nobody's ever happy with their job. You put up with it for 40 years and then you die.
Most people switch occupations every 7 years, and maybe these kids are seeing their parents unhappy and they don't want to become their parents.
Well, yeah, there is some justification to that. Daily Mail now, Canadian truckers. One of those stories that I just feel the British, we see it through whatever prism we brought with us to this story, where very few of us have any idea about the reality on the ground. But Trudeau's government are making some questionable comparisons, Eric.
Yeah, this is a story in the Daily Mail about the fact that Trudeau's decided to freeze the funding that's going to these trucker protests, who are protesting vaccine mandates and various other things, because it's morphed now into a whole different thing.
It's ballooned, doesn't it?
I struggle to care because it's about Canada, and no one cares about Canada, even Canadians. But apparently,
I do actually. Just to say, I have a couple of Canadian relatives who have been saying, like in online chat groups, we wish we were bored. We were still boring. We preferred it when we were bored.
But the thing is, that's what he's trying to stop in a way, because it's not just Canada being boring. Some of these protesters, he's putting freezes on their funds.
Yeah.
That, whether you agree with that or not, is very debatable. And but of the $10 million that's been sent in contributions to some of these people protesting, 44% has come out of the U.S.
Yeah.
So that is foreign influencing into a domestic affair.
Yeah.
And I can see why they'd want to stop that.
Yeah.
So they've called it essentially terrorist funds to try and stop the money because
outrageous.
the Americans are meddling.
It's ridiculous.
What's outrageous?
Without the U.S.,
Without
the U.S., the Canadians wouldn't have an indoor toilet. We fund everything there. Why should this be any different? We put the gas in their trucks. Look, these truckers, if you've watched the videos and you've read their statements, they're hand-holding and singing songs together. That $10 million was going to feed them and keep them warm. Trudeau hopes they freeze to death. He hopes they die. He's been making all these absurd statements about it's about racism, it's about homophobia, it's about misogyny. They've made no statements in this regard at all.
There's been a few Nazi
I think even
there's always a few Nazi flags.
I think a couple of, I don't know, but it seems to me more likely that some of the Nazi flags were actually kind of saying we don't want to live under the Nazis because this is, where are your papers? It lands much more as a criticism of, it doesn't make any sense.
There's no formidable statement that includes that at all from these people. What they're saying is they don't want to be told what to do. And, I think a lot of people feel that way. And especially now that, we've made a lot of sacrifices over the last 2 years, all of us have, so that, the Queen can turn 96. And I feel like,
That's true.
Yeah.
There's a guy, is it Doug Ford? I think he's the mayor of Toronto, has made a speech. He's kind of, he's on the right, but he's kind of coming out basically. There's a lot of
He's problematic, though, himself.
No, absolutely. But he is backing the truckers. A lot of the army are refusing. They're saying, don't come to us. We're not going to enforce this.
Yes.
And the police are. And there's quite a lot of that kind of blue-collar solidarity emerging.
And Ford hates Trudeau, and Trudeau is made nervous by the working classes, although not that these truckers are working class. But I think he doesn't really know how to speak to his own people. And when you watch him speak on TV, he's more concerned with the style of his hair and the women he's dating. And it just seems like at some point he has to engage with what the public opinion might be.
And what do you think about the Castro rumours? They've been there for ages, but they're coming up now.
The Castro rumours.
Is Trudeau Castro's son? Oh. Do you not know that? You not know that? Oh, it's fantastic.
I knew
you
you
have to Google that. You have to
say it.
Oh,
clearly.
Ridiculous.
This is anti-Castro.
He looks so much like his dad.
There's nothing in it, but it's an amazingly enticing, absolute rabbit hole. Anyway, we've reached the end of this section. Here are some adverts. Watch them, buy their products, fill that empty void within you. We'll see you on the other side. Thank you.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate.
From all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel.
Right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back to Headliners. It's me, Simon Evans, the wonderful Eric McElroy, and the comedically insightful Scott Capurro. Let's get on with it. Women in Saudi Arabia have only recently been allowed to drive cars. Now, 3 years on, they're being hired to drive trains. Very exciting. Eric.
Yeah, I mean, it's Saudi Arabia is sort of opening up its rules against the restrictions that they have on women.
Yeah.
I guess the same thing that we were talking about happening in Kuwait earlier in the show. They had 28,000 women apply for 30 positions driving these trains.
Wow.
Just incredible.
Has there been an animated TV show for children which they've grown up with? Which has given them any,
I think some of the women might think it's safer to drive a train in Saudi Arabia than be a journalist.
Okay.
So they're figuring it's a safer place to be.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's like it's great, but it feels like because Saudi Arabia is so restricted on what it allows women to do, that it's kind of a token. They're trying to improve the image of what Saudi Arabia does.
Can I ask it like this that might sound extraordinarily uneducated? What level of freedom do they have in headdress at the moment in Saudi Arabia, women?
I think it's still quite restricted. I mean, I was only in Saudi Arabia once, and it was tense. I mean, it was not a place where you felt relaxed or comfortable.
Right.
And that was going into other Arab countries like Bahrain, where people were much friendlier and warm. But the whole atmosphere there felt oppressive. And at the conference I was at, when the head of the conference came in, all of the women that were Saudi had to leave and wait in the back room while the Crown Prince walked through the conference. Now, this was 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Maybe it would be better now, but it's still a very oppressive culture.
That's an extraordinarily important statistic, though. 31,000 women applying for 30 jobs.
Sorry, 28,000.
28,000 women applying.
I mean, that
for
does
jobs.
feel like the kind of pressure. Once that sort of pressure starts to build, you can't resist that for very long, can you? I don't think. If women are that keen to take on even like fairly short.
Because historically they've allowed women to work in education and healthcare.
Yeah,
So they've really restricted jobs. And again, Saudi has the same problem that the other Gulf states do, that they have a lot of expat workers and they don't have native people doing regular jobs.
No.
But the Saudi population is much bigger. There are a lot more Saudis. And so finding something for them to do is important.
Got anything on this, Scott? What do you think?
No, when I perform in the Middle East, Abu Dhabi, Dubai, Doha, you do have that feeling that you're interfering if you're foreign. And you do have the feeling that you are less than. Yeah. And that's across the board, male or female people who are there. And I always am amazed that women are there working on their own, but they're there to make a lot of money and come home and buy a house. But it just seems that they do tell me when I'm there that the times that they're working, it's very difficult, that they're basically treated like scum. So that would be a bit too much for me.
I mean,
And
at least as a train driver, I suppose you've got your cabin, you're on your own.
Again, I think
You've got
women.
your sandwiches
I
in
think
there and you're okay.
Saudi women want positions that have been left up to men in the past because, again, they don't just want to compete with men. They want to have the kind of freedom that men do, whatever that means. They don't even know what it means yet. They'd like to experience it. You know?
90 miles per hour in a bullet train from Medina to
Mecca.
Mecca. That's got to be some degree of freedom.
Yeah.
A story from Wordle scores have illustrated for months. Brains do not slow down until after the age of 60. It runs counter to, I think, a popular misconception that people start to get a bit thicker earlier than that, Scott. This is quite interesting. This is like a sort of byproduct of another...
It is, yeah. I'm worried about this in a way because I'm going to turn 60 next year, and I'm assuming at that point...
You never are.
That I will.
Doesn't he look well?
Well, you're really lovely to say that, and I'll buy you a drink later. But the finding goes against the assumption, like you're saying, that mental processing speed, people thought, declines after the age of 20. But it's been discovered that it actually doesn't decline, the processing speed at least. What people become is more careful about their answers. They want to get the answers right.
Yes.
That young people, especially teenagers, tend to go for speed and not really care about accuracy.
Yeah.
But older people do. And it was found, you're right, this really interesting study was found through Harvard, through a think tank. They were measuring people's association between race and evaluation.
This is the implicit bias training that a lot of organizations have now.
They do have it, yeah.
They're just trying to find
It was called Harvard's Project Implicit.
Yeah.
And they were looking at over 1 million participants aged 10 to 80. And they were trying to measure what they thought about race and the language they used to describe it. Yeah. And in doing so, they looked at the data just purely based on speed and age. And they found that really 40 to 60-year-olds can move as quickly, but they want to get it right.
Yeah, that's interesting. What do you think, Eric?
Again, I feel happy about this because I'm 10 years away from 60. So I was getting worried about turning 50 this year, but now I've got another 10 years of...
What worries me, though, is if you can get to 60 and then start to decline, that's obviously fine. Yeah. Joe Biden, 78.
I know.
I mean, you know what I mean? I still feel that we should be probably taking the meat of our world leaders from the 40 to 60
well,
range,
if you saw him on TV the other night, he mispronounced the word liberty. That made me worry. And then
mind you, George W. Bush couldn't say nuclear, could he?
No, he couldn't.
No.
It was hard.
But that's good, because that's the only thing that stops him from launching missiles.
Next up from the Times, deck chair wars raging in Italy. Eric, I do quite like this story. This is interesting.
It is interesting. I've not spent a lot of time on the Italian beaches, but apparently the beaches are controlled by these consortiums that control up to 50% of the sandy beaches.
And the government sell them licenses, right?
So government licenses, but it's been controlled by these families for many years. Yeah. So the government is looking, because they're partly being forced to by the EU, it looks like, to break up these monopolies on the beaches.
It's an EU thing. Okay. Right.
It gets tied into the EU, which always gets dull and boring. But basically, they're going to have to sell some of these licenses. And families are complaining because they've held them for years. Yeah. They're worried that consortiums are going to come buy them up. Yeah. Mobs are going to come in, which a mob beach, that it would change. Wow. I mean, imagine The Godfather if it was set on a beach. Give me a deck chair you can't refuse.
Head of a seahorse.
Yeah, exactly. But
I've been to some of these paid beaches. The very first time I went to Europe, I hitchhiked in. I was 18 years old, waiting for my A-level results to come back. I was with a mate Ross, and we hitchhiked down to the south coast. And I went on some of them in the south coast of France. And there were the public beaches you could just go on, and they were really scratching weird. And one day we went, let's spend a couple of francs and go. And it wasn't really expensive, but it was an entirely different experience. Full of beautiful people.
Yeah,
it was amazing. I was like, that's probably the best couple of francs I've ever spent. Yeah.
But now it's going to get very expensive in Italy now because, the Hilton Consortium, like you said, will come in, or whatever hotel is nearby will buy it, and then before you know, unless you stay at the hotel, you can't stay there. You can't use that beach. It's going to. I really like it the way it is.
I live in Brighton, as you know, and I wouldn't mind a couple of private beaches if they elevated the quality of your experience. Because to be honest, Brighton Beach is rubbish. It's just pebbly and nasty.
Yeah, it's very.
You get some people in who'd deck it or something.
Or grind the rocks up a little bit.
Well, it's deliberately the pebbles have been put there to prevent erosion, because if it was sand, it would come up and wash. It would. There's a fear that it would wash away the. You've got the embankment or whatever, the elevated road. So the pebbles, that's the first time I realised that. I didn't realise that bulldozers come along every so often and kind of
so uncomfortable.
It's horrible. They've made it really... Anyway.
Yeah.
Friday's Daily Mail, an artificial intelligence company, says soon every person on the planet will find themselves part of a huhuge facial recognition database. I only took this job in order to get face famous, and now it seems that there's an AI that can do it for me.
Well, it's it's a great story. It's a bit terrifying in a way. It's like a futuristic film. This company, Clearview AI, promises that within a very short period of time, they're going to collect 100 billion photos of humans, faces, 14 photos of each of the 7 billion people on the entire planet.
Well, I mean, everyone who's got a smartphone, they're done already, aren't
that's where they're scraping them together.
Yeah. I always think, and people talk to their smartphones now more than they do to their children. I always think there is this kind of, children learn about the world from looking at their parents' faces when they're little. Well, your smarphone is doing that now.
You see people out in a bar and there are 4 people at a table, they're all speaking on their phones, all looking at each. So, he's going to gather, this company owner said, I'm going to gather these photos and sell them, apparently, to police units and to government so that they can identify these people. And police have already started using them, and they said that it's increased the number of arrests. But a lot of the photos are gathered off Facebook and YouTube. So the guy who runs the company, an Australian CEO, Howan Ton That, he's 34, he says, look, these are all public photos, I can use them. But a lot of groups are saying this, ACLU is suing him. Some governments, like Australia, has said, no, you can't do this here. So.
Scary world. That is it from us. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. Thank you to Scott and Eric. We've been headliners. We will see you here tomorrow, where Mark Dolan will be hosting, and he'll be joined by the comedians Sajila Kershi and Leo Kerr. See you then. Good night.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and every weekday we bring you The Briefing live from 9:30 a.m. The stories, analysis and live debate that you need to hear.
Quite right, Tom, of course.
Was this something that had been considered at all?
Difficult to answer.
Gas-guzzling helicopters circling. Noise is being made here. Joe Biden walking out. Thank you very much for joining us. Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, Monday to Friday, 9:30 a.m. on GB News.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Is Farage at Large, live from Southend-on-Sea. Please welcome your host, Nigel Farage.
With Farage at large in Southend, if you can hear me, it's about to get city status. We, of course, had the awful death of Sir David Amos. We're going to talk Ukraine. We're going to talk Southend. We're going to talk so many things. But before we get started, let's go to the news.
Good evening. Your top story tonight. A rare red weather warning has been issued for South Wales and South West England ahead of Storm Eunice, which is due to hit the UK tonight. All schools in North Wales and Bristol will close.